A World War II US commander is desperate for revenge on the ship that destroyed his submarine, a goal that causes conflict with his fellow officers. This is Run Silent, Run Deep, and with names like Clark Gable and Burt Lancaster, it's sure to feel big. Welcome everyone to the Collector's Cut. I am Peter, and joining me as always is David.
If only I was born on the 8th.
This is a movie podcast, and we are doing Submarine Season. We started last week with The Enemy Below, and this week we're doing another 1950s submarine movie called Run Silent, Run Deep. So we will start spoiler-free, of course, as we always do. We'll give you a warning before we get into the spoilers, and if you're enjoying the show on YouTube, hit the like button, helps out a bunch if you do. And of course, you can support us on Patreon and get some bonus stuff, but I'll tell you more about that at the end of the episode. So, yeah, I mean, I think when I was looking up submarine movies, there's some obvious ones that we're getting to soon, starting is next week, in fact. We're getting to some really big heavy hitters, but there was a lot from the 50s, and I presume because submarine warfare was a pretty major part of World War II, so inherently in the years that followed, there was a reasonable amount of movies made in that kind of era of Hollywood, and it made sense to do at least a couple of those. So the two that I ended up putting on the schedule were probably the two of the more seemingly well-regarded ones of the era. So curious to dive into this one and see how this compares to last week's movie, but this one's got Burt Lancaster, Clark Gable as our two big lead actors, a couple other recognizable faces in there as well, and Robert Wise is the director, who I've seen that name pop up a bunch. I mean, he did West Side Story and The Sound of Music, which is arguably what he's most famous for, but I was
gonna say, however, would be like, oh, that rube.
Yeah, well, I see his name and I'm thinking, oh, what have I seen that name in? And it's like, oh, he did The Haunting, he did The Andromeda Strain, he did Star Trek The Motion Picture. Like, he's got a name that I recognize, but it's not necessarily for the absolute biggest things that he did, because they're musicals, and I don't like musicals, so.
No, that's fair. That's such a strange run, if you just look at it in terms of, like, starting out with this military sort of warfare, moving into musicals, and then over to sci-fi. It's just a weird arc for the director.
Yeah, I mean, hey, maybe he was doing what was popular at the time, and then he's like, I want to do some sci-fi because I like sci-fi, or who knows, maybe.
Yeah.
Or maybe it was like a downgrade. Hey, we won't give you the big prestigious musicals anymore, but we'll let you do a sci-fi movie over there. Then he took what he could get. I don't know. Could have.
Who knows?
Either of those options or anything else really, but
he did well with it though.
But so Run Silent, Run Deep. The basic premise of this one is that Clark Gable plays a character who is the victim of a Japanese ship that destroys the submarine that he commands in 1942. 1 year later, he basically politics his way onto the command of another submarine, which was supposed to be captained by Burt Lancaster, but he's been told that he's only the XO because Clark Gable's coming in strutting his stuff. And Clark Gable, though, might be a little obsessed with going after the ship that put him down a year prior, rather than actually doing anything that he's been ordered to do by the Navy. So that's the basic gist of it. And there's some obviously captain and XO tensions of different opinions and that kind of thing. That arise from it, but that's the basic premise of it. I think this will be interesting to compare to last week's movie, because I think some of the things we actively said about last week's movie that it didn't do, that we wanted it to, I think this one arguably does a lot of those things, but it has its own weaknesses as well. So it's kind of a weird but interesting comparison, because it's like, oh, we're seeing different strengths in two movies that are relatively close together. I mean, they're only, a year apart, I think, these two movies?
Yeah. I mean, this one feels like it had maybe a little bit quicker of a turnaround time, so I wouldn't say they were filmed simultaneously, but it definitely feels like it's at least in production at the same time.
Oh, sure. I mean, honestly, the schedules of when things are filmed is all over the place, depending on what the movie is, so I wouldn't worry too much about that. It's more just, like it's not just from they're both from the 50s. They are like right next to each other, and
Right.
they're it's they both have a couple of big actors kind of anchoring them, and no pun intended. And that's it feels like there's a lot of similarities, but whereas last movie one of our main complaints was, oh, it feels like no matter what happens, no matter how dark it should feel or how down it should feel, they're just very like, we're American Navy, so we're happy all the time because we know we're the best. And that was like too persistent. Whereas this one, no, when something bad happens, like, no, they look a bit tortured. They look a little bit like they're scared and like, oh, things might go bad here and we might not get home. And that's actually something that it plays with. So that was the big thing that was sticking out to me, was just how different this was to last week's movie. In that sense, but
no, it definitely has a lot more in terms of the writing, in terms of the characters, in terms of depth like that. There's definitely a lot more substantiative stuff here.
But I think without further ado, we'll just get into our feelings on the movie. So David, what did you think of Run Silent, Run Deep?
I think it was good. I found myself engaged with the material. I think it's very well done. If we are making comparisons to last movie, I think that it is a lot better in terms of making it feel like there are actual stakes. I really feel like the character work is a lot stronger here between the captain and his commanding officer. And then the only thing that I think is maybe a bit of a downgrade is the production value. I feel like this one, maybe I just had more of an eye out for it. I don't know specifically, but I could feel the miniatures being used a lot more in this. I could feel like some recycled shots and some stock footage and stuff like that. Well, and that was
a big thing in the last movie, though, right? Is that there was a lot of real ship shots, whereas this one is pretty much all miniatures, and which is fine. But like if you're watching this in decent quality, you can clearly see the strings that are pulling the submarines and the torpedoes and all that around.
I mean, I'm not even so much talking about that. Like, a big thing in this movie is explosions in water. Like, you have things that hit the water and there's a big explosion, and you can just kind of tell by how the water explodes and how it splashes.
Yeah, the scale. You can miniaturize a lot of things, but you can't fake the scale of water or fire.
Right, exactly. And so that was the thing where I was like, okay, so that thing's probably like 3 feet long. Got it.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, it's I think that in spite of that, like all of that stuff being true, I was invested with the characters, the way the plot moved throughout this. There is one pivot in this movie, one character development that, watching it, I felt was extremely weak and didn't fit in with what the movie was doing. And then I read a trivia bit is exactly why that happened, and it all makes sense now. So we'll get to that when we get to it. But no, I think this one is fair. I think it's a fine enough movie, but like, I also don't think that there's anything in this that's really jumping out as a wow, that was amazing or anything like that. It's just consistently good throughout the whole thing.
Yeah, it's interesting you saying there's one pivot point you didn't think rang completely true, because I also feel that way, and I'm assuming we're thinking about the same pivot, but I don't know for sure until we get to spoilers and actually talk about it. But I would say that, I mean, like, the acting's solid. I think this one does a better job of setting up some character dynamics that it maintains throughout the movie. It doesn't seem to forget anything, which is good. Everyone other than the two leads and maybe one or two supporting characters are kind of just a bunch of red shirts, effectively, though. So it does have maybe that problem of like not really connecting with any of them. And there's positives and negatives to it being like a pretty tight 90 minutes. Is on the one side, the pacing's not too bad, but on the other side, there is maybe some stuff that maybe could have milked a bit more tension, or maybe we could have understood the methodology at one or 2 points a little bit more or something like that. But by and large, I think it's a little bit better than last week's movie because it nails things that I think are more important to this type of movie. As much as the production value is a little bit ropier, it feels a little bit more hokey when it does do the exterior submarine stuff. Ultimately, the actual drama is better, except for that one pivot point where I think after that point, I was never fully on board with why we were doing a good chunk of the third act, even though arguably some of the best stuff is also in the third act because it does some interesting stuff. But it feels like it doesn't necessarily pay off the character like conflict in a way that I felt like it was building up to. And I obviously we'll talk about it more in spoilers, but at least here, all I can say is that it may be, well, I think it's better than the last movie in terms of like it sticking to it for most of the movie. Because the last movie, it kind of felt like an Enemy Below. It felt like there was things loosely set up in the first 15 minutes that then just were never brought up again, and it never went anywhere. This feels like it sticks to all the things that it sets up, except for one pivotal thing where a character changes their mind on something, and then from that point on, I'm like, well, I'm not sure what this really does for the message or the themes of the movie now that you've changed this up. So,
right.
But yeah, hey, you know, like there's good tense sequences. There's exciting enough conflicts happening in the characters themselves. But it's not great though. I still think there's a ceiling here where it never goes into being an actually great movie with like really kind of riveting character drama. It's solid character drama. Like they make sense. Like the things they set up cause conflict that is understandable, and it doesn't feel forced when they do it, and it feels like the tensions are rising. But it's not as good as like an A-list sort of script or something like that, where you're sort of like on edge the entire time and you're at like a tipping point and so on. And I think what's interesting about this idea of the captain and the XO having a disagreement of sorts and having a bit of tension there is that I know for a fact that one of the movies we're doing later in this season is going to revisit that central idea of the captain and the XO having differing opinions, and it maybe even been more the crux of the entire movie. And I'm excited to get to that one now and maybe like think back to this one and compare, okay, what are the differences here other than maybe just the sentiments of a different time period, because the other movie's in the 90s. So how have things changed up to make it more effective, arguably, in that one? I'll be curious to think about that once we get to it.
Yeah, I do think if we're thinking about the same kind of movies here, as we get into the later ones, I do think that those lead a bit more into the idea of, to an extent, fear and paranoia. The idea of like, you know, what's the correct thing to do? Whereas this one feels a lot more about ego. It feels a lot more about like, yes, there's the idea that like they both want what is best for the ship and like winning the war and all that, but it's coming down to this guy was promised the ship and then the other guy took control of it.
Yeah, and even the captain's whole thing is he wants to go after this ship, the Akikaze, that destroyed his previous submarine. It feels like a personal vendetta, which is fine. Like, it actually is totally fine if that's really what we're focusing on and the movie becomes entirely about that. But it does have the knock-on effect, though, of like the larger war that's going on. World War II is happening, and it feels like nothing they're doing is really doing anything to accomplish anything in that war. It's more just this personal thing, other than just broadly saying, oh, if they take it out, that's one less Japanese ship. So I guess it's tipped the scales ever so slightly, but that's about it.
I took this ship, as they were talking about it, as essentially taking out the Red Baron sort of thing, where it's like, here's this thing that has taken out so many other ships, because that's also very early on in the movie. They show the sinking of his first submarine, and then they very quickly say like, yeah, and there's been like 3 other submarines sunk. Like this area that they go to, the Bungo Straits, I believe it's called.
Yes.
It's like just an absolute graveyard. There is no way of anyone surviving there, and so being able to take out some ships there would be highly beneficial to the cause in general. Yeah. But he's not thinking about that. But it's all about like, nah, I just want revenge.
And no one ever really brings up the cause. No one ever talks about the war in a larger sense or what's going on in the world. It's just, we just happen to be in war and that's why we're out here, right? On with the plot. Like, that's it. It's never about the war itself, even though it's technically a war movie because it takes place, you know, in a naval combat situation within World War II. It never really becomes about that. It's just, you know, the setting for what the character's doing.
Yeah.
So
I will say a difference also between the last movie and this one is the last one felt like it was sometimes purposefully being obtuse with all of its lingo and all the like phrasing of things that are happening. This one, it uses the lingo, but I feel like it does a great job of getting across what each and everything means when they're saying it. Like if someone says like, all right, get this thing ready, and you don't know what it is, they'll cut to showing them getting the thing ready, and you know what it means.
I wouldn't say it's perfect. Like I definitely think there's more modern movies that still do it better. But yeah, compared to the last movie, it's a pretty big difference of like trying to make everything they're saying understandable visually to some extent, if nothing else.
Right.
But you know, yeah, that's definitely another thing that's maybe a little bit better as well. Yeah, I mean, this one also ends with like a text dedication saying, "Hey, thanks to the Department of Defense and this submarine who helped us out and gave us support." So,
which, I mean, that was something we theorized back on the last movie: is did they have to make it all Djangoistic America, hell yeah, in order to get the department funding? And obviously, this is the exact same time, and it's not unfriendly, but it's definitely less Djangoistic.
Yeah, but I think that the last one like had them filming on a real ship and stuff like that, which whereas this one, like maybe they contacted a consultant to ask some questions, but it didn't seem like they gave them stuff, you know, or like, hey, here's a submarine to play with, you know.
Well, I think it did say, I might be wrong, down at the end they said like, and thanks to like the USS flotilla or something like that. So
yeah, they thanked a particular ship.
Yeah, so I mean that is a ship. They did have access to that at the very least.
Well, yeah, but it's not. I mean, if it's in the movie, it's very like maybe the interiors are like, but like you know, it's not in the same scale as the last movie though.
There's a single shot, not a single shot, a sequence of them just over the surface, and you see a person like walking along the top of it from like a far angle. That might be it. That might be the only thing they really used it for there. They
got one little sequence out of it to sell the you know the spectacle, and that was it. Right, everything else from this point on is miniatures. Off we go, which you know is perfectly fine. And the beauty of a submarine story though is that you don't necessarily need to have a lot of good visuals, because part of the charm of it is that we're in like the tin can and we're using sonar and we're using these other things to try and deal with what's around us. You can kind of get away with not showing a whole lot. You can get away with just shaking the camera and having them do the Star Trek thing where they're all like, oh, like we're moving around because we've maybe been hit by a torpedo or something.
Yeah,
right.
They definitely do that in this. There's several times where everyone's just like, and right,
Yeah, I mean it's effective. That's the thing. It works. The reason why they do it is because all you have to have the actors do is move a certain way and tilt the camera, and it looks like something's happening, even though on set there's some famous footage of one of the Star Trek times of them doing that, where they've stabilized the footage so that you can see how silly it actually looked in real life, and it's pretty funny. So
yeah, I mean that's one of those things where if you stabilize it, you very quickly realize that like, not everyone's going the same way at the same time. There's the camera's masking a lot of that.
But that's the good point though. It does not matter. Like they get away with it because it still looks effective, even if not everyone's like, you know, in sync with the idea of like, oh, we're all tilting to this side kind of thing. So yeah, I think it's a good movie. I don't know if it's one that I'll necessarily be chomping at the bit again to revisit, much like last week's movie, even though I do think this one is, in most ways, a little bit better. Not like night and day better, but in most ways, a little bit better. Like, I think what the last movie had, other than the spectacle of having, like, a real ship for a lot of shots and things like that, is maybe the complexities of having, like, the commander of the opposing force be more of a fleshed out character, which is, you know, kind of a nuanced thing to do, especially in the 1950s. This does not have that, but it does have more actual dynamics between the characters we're following on the main submarine, but you know, particularly the captain and the XO.
Yeah, I would say the last one felt more like an actual war movie. This one feels like a submarine movie, and there's a difference there. It just happens to be at wartime, like you said earlier.
Yeah, it's also possible something could be equally both, but I agree that these two pivot or lean one way or the other, depending. I say that because I'm pretty sure Das Sput next week is going to be pretty heavily both, from what I remember. But we'll
see when we get there.
We'll see when we get there. All 3.5 hours of the.
Oh my god, movie. Are you kidding me? I don't got that kind of time, Pete.
That's the short version as well.
Oh my god.
The full version was like a TV miniseries, which was like 5 hours. You count your lucky chickens.
You know, knowing me, I'm going to accidentally watch that version without even realizing it.
Because you're going to see the words director's cut and think, oh no, that's the long version. No, the director's cut's the shorter like
Oh yeah, I
version.
absolutely would have done that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, the director's cut's the one you kind of want, actually, because I mean, there might be a shorter version than that. I can't remember, but the director's cut's definitely like a long movie and not the 5 hour, like 2-part TV thing that it was also shown as at one point. So
Gotcha. Leave down in the comments how we're totally not watching the proper version of this.
like 3.5 hours is plenty. All right, that's plenty. Don't need to do more than that. All right.
Yeah.
It's going to be longer than this movie and the last movie combined as it is. That's not.
Yeah.
Let's not push it. All right.
Jesus.
So, yeah. I mean, I think we're probably a bit ready for. For spoilers, I don't think I have much more to add. I guess other than just maybe the performances, which I think are solid enough. I mean, again, maybe that's the thing. Maybe James Mason in the last movie is better than any one actor in this movie as far as like giving some gravitas. But I think the acting here is very solid amongst the one actor that we hadn't mentioned yet that I do want to bring up, just to get his name here correct. Jack Warden, who you might remember from 12 Angry Men.
I was wondering why 12 Angry Men was being suggested. Yes.
Yeah. He's here. He's like one of the sort of recurring crewmen you see on the ship. He kind of works under like the captain a bit more. He kind of comes on board with him, so he's a bit more loyal to the captain. Is kind of his thing.
Yeah. To Gable.
Yeah.
No, and I mean the two leads, as you already said there, they do a great job. I think it's very good of them to have cast. Even if it's not, it feels like two different generations here. Like, it feels like Gable represents the older and then him the younger, but they both still have solid leading man energy. So, like, you are equally kind of feeling for both of them rather than leaning to one side or the other.
Now you've said that, I'm curious. Like, Clark Gable was born in 1901.
Okay.
And Lancaster was born 1913, which actually I think that sounds right, because to me it's not so much like a full generation, like, because when you think of a generation you think about 20 years of a difference, because that's like, you know, that could be your son kind of thing. I think here this sounds a bit right. It doesn't feel like Lancaster's supposed to be young. It just feels like he's at that point in his career when he's ready to be given like a captain's position, which you inherently you're not young when you get offered a captain's position. You tend to be very experienced and like had been in the Navy for a while, so it makes sense that he's a good decade or so younger than the older captain, but it's not that mammoth of a difference either.
Right, it just feels like one of them was being sunsetted and the other one is just starting, but they both feel capable. They both feel like they are in that same area of their expertise.
Yeah. So, I mean, Clark Gable, I mean, obviously known for Gone with the Wind, It Happened One Night, amongst other stuff from the 30s and 40s. Lancaster, we saw in Airport some seasons ago, of course. Although
Cassandra Crossing, he was in that.
Oh, of course, yeah. But of course, I mean, that's not going to be his more famous stuff. I mean, according to IMDb, his most famous movies From Here to Eternity, which I have heard of, but I haven't seen that one, so I can't really comment on it too much. But I mean, they both do a solid job of the roles. Like, they could be even more complex as far as the characters themselves go, but I think the actors are doing a fine enough job.
Oh yeah, no, I had no problem when it came down to the acting in this, but like my big thing from the last movie was the actor playing the opposing captain, the one playing the German captain.
Yeah, Mason.
I don't feel like I feel anywhere near as strongly about either of these two, but I also don't feel negatively by any stretch of the imagination. No,
not at all. Well, with that said, I think we'll say spoilers so we can talk about it then and get into it. And I don't think this is going to be a super long conversation, because I think once you actually sort of like say out what happens in the movie, it's not actually that much. I mean, it is only 90 minutes for a start, and there's a little bit of setup time, right? There's the idea that the captain, we get like a quick glimpse of like his orders on the previous submarine, and then him and his men floating in the water with the debris to show that they've been destroyed. Right, that's a very quick thing at the start, but you get a couple of scenes where it's like setting up that he's working with Jack Warden, and he's like, "Oh, this ship has taken down like 4 submarines in the past year. I gotta get back. I'm gonna go talk to the command. I'm gonna go try and get myself a thing." And we get introduced equally to Burt Lancaster on the submarine, where his men are literally giving him a present, a jacket, because he's about to be promoted to captain, and they're all happy about it because they respect him and they want him to be in charge. And of course, he finds out from an admiral or whoever, oh, sorry, we're giving this other guy, Richardson, Clark Gable's character, command because he's been in these waters before, this seventh sector, and because of that,
that's the reason that's given. But like even Burt Lancaster at the point's like, that sounds stupid. I don't like that idea.
Yeah, it's like, it sounds like he went and got what he wanted by asking the people higher up because he's in good with them, and he accuses Cable of that when he goes to see him at his home. He goes to see him at his home, and he's like, hey, I don't want to be your XO. I'm pissed at you for taking my command. I think it'd be better for both of us if I'm not there.
He basically tries to phrase it in the way of like, hey, my men gave me a pretty cool jacket. I don't think they're going to be cool with you. And the fact that I can't wear my jacket. And he's like, well, you're going to be there with me, so I hope we can be cool about that. And he's like, yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, he says no. He says, no, you're going to be my XO because you're a good officer, and I demand that. I'm not letting you go. Request denied. And he's like, you son of a bitch. He walks off.
All right, I'll do my... And that's kind of his big thing about his character is he's going to disagree. He's the Riker to the Picard here. We're going to have disagreements, but he's going to follow orders. He's going to do what he has to do.
He's going to follow orders. Even when the crew suggests that he takes command from the captain at one point, he shuts that down, says, no, he's our captain, we're going to listen. And it's not until people actually die, because the captain gives some orders that do feel like they're not terrible orders per se, but just like he is clearly like blindsided and he's not following his own orders. And he gets hurt with a concussion, and that's finally when he says, you know what, I'm taking command.
All right.
You're done.
So I want to rewind slightly.
Yes.
Very beginning of the movie, when he hears about all the submarine stuff and how there's 4 ships now sunk there, I do like the idea that we immediately get that this character is so obsessive that every day he's calling in his, I don't know what you'll call him, assistant, whatever guy. Yeah. And he's calling in the assistant, and they're running a drill, which is basically just, okay, time it out. If I had done this all properly, if I know what I know now, and I had done it properly, could I have survived that, the original submarine sinking? And he gets to a point where, every single time he runs the drill, he's successful, but it didn't matter in the one time that it happened.
Well, when you say run drill, that's not use that word, because later on the submarine they actually run drills. What you're talking about here is him and his buddy here have got little toy warships, and they basically just walk through the events. So it's more of a theoretical thing they're doing here.
Yeah,
okay,
but it is with like stopwatches and all that. All the timings have to line up. But he's successful at all those. And when he hears about the extra sinkings in the Bungo Straits, he's like, oh, okay, well, I'm taking a ship, and I'm going to finally be able to get vengeance for all of my men.
But that's not his orders. Let's be clear here. Yes. He is actively told not to go to that section. He is not to go... Right, so they're to go to Sector 7, but not the Bungo Strait, right?
That's a bit I really like in the movie, is that every single person on this ship is like, oh, what area are we going to? Let's all place like bets on it. And they all know that Area 7 is a death trap. And they're all like hoping it's not that. And then he gets over the comms. He says, all right, here's the orders, da-da-da. We're going to Area 7, but we are explicitly told don't go near the Bungo Straits. But they don't know what the Bungo Straits are. They don't know that that's the death trap section. So they're all still super scared and like we're all going to die for like a good week or so on this ship.
Yeah, there's a whole thing here where the young kid, the young guy on the crew, picks Sector 7 in the betting pool, and they all get mad at him even before they find out where they're going, because they think it's a jinx. Like, why would you pick 7? That's the death trap. Why would you pick 7? And the kid's like, I didn't know that. It's just my birthday. I was born on the 7th. It's my lucky number. That's all.
I mean, that's valid. I see no reason as to why that guy should be ostracized for that, except for the fact that, it ends up being Area 7.
Yeah, they're all superstitious. Later on, when one of them tries to say, hey, you know what, we've all decided not to be mad at you anymore. You can just give us the money back if you feel guilty. And he's like, gee, I felt so golly sorry, sir, that I threw it overboard because I was just so riddled with guilt.
Yeah.
I'm like,
He's
okay.
almost... Here's the thing. He's almost the joke character. He's almost the one that is just like, oh, let's like have some fun, do whatever. Right up until you realize that he's actually just a little puppy they can shoot in order to get some sympathy points.
Yeah, he's one of the 3 men that die later in the movie. So, and he's the one that they devoted time to making him look innocent and naive, and so you'd care a little bit. So yeah, I mean, it does what it does. It's all very fine and well. Once we get on the ship, it's basically it splits up really neatly into sections here, right? Section 1, Captain Gable runs a bunch of drills where he's basically practicing this maneuver of, can we dive from the surface to about 30 feet and then immediately fire torpedoes? Can we get that down to like as quickly as possible, like 30 seconds, which is something
like 45. They need to get it down to 30.
Yeah, and well, 45's even after they've already done it a bunch of times. So like they who knows what they were at when they started, but that's the whole idea here. Is he wants to practice that maneuver over and over again because he thinks that's going to be the killing blow. That's how they take out this ship that's been destroying submarines. So he's obsessed with it. The men are like getting tired. They're frustrated. They don't understand why they're doing this over and over again. And the real tipping point for them as a collective group is that at one point they actually pick up a signal of a Japanese submarine somewhere in their rear. And the captain just orders to go on ahead to get away from it. Doesn't want to engage it. Doesn't want to do anything with it. And they're like, wait, why aren't we fighting it? What's going on here? This is strange. Is he a coward? Like, what's happening? Yeah. And Burt Lancaster, to be fair to him, is like, I don't think you're a coward. I don't think that's why you made that choice. I think you've got a game plan and you don't want anything to get in the way of what your actual target is. You're going to ignore everything possible until we get to where you want to go, which of course is to get to the Bungo Strait and go after this one ship that destroyed his sub out of petty revenge.
Men don't see it that way. The men see it as he's drilling us like crazy, but then when there's a chance to actually help the war effort and do a good thing, we're turning away and running away. And like he immediately, Clark Gable, as soon as he hears that the men think he's like, don't care. We're doubling the drill amount. Like, I'm not going to explain myself.
Yeah. He's very stubborn, I guess we should say. And then they do test it on like just a Japanese ship, like a convoy ship or something like that. They just kind of come across a ship and they're like, oh, let's try this, which they do. And the impressive part to all the men is the fact that they fire at the ship, like I think head on, and that's like not the usual tactic. And they hit the ship and it blows up, and they're like, holy crap, we did that. That was very impressive. That's what all these drills have been for. So they kind of have a bit of faith in the captain from that point on, at least for a while anyway. Like they seem to kind of their fears and their doubts subside at least somewhat at that point, I think.
Yeah. They got this whole bit where the entire point of it, and it's again just a single ship. There's nothing else they really have to worry about, so that's why they do it here. They could hit it on the broadside, but he's like, no, the plan is we're going to hit it from straight ahead because the ship that I'm after, the Akinazi or whatever, is going to be fast enough to do that. We're going to have to face it head on. So we're going to practice on this one first. And yeah, they all love the guy and they're just saying like, oh, what an awesome guy. And he's finally earned our respect and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. So he wants to go into these waters he's not supposed to go into. Burt Lancaster tries to, of course, confront him about it a couple times. And basically, though, it doesn't go to plan for a couple of reasons. One is that some Japanese planes are kind of waiting for them and just immediately start firing upon them. It feels like because basically this ship they're going after kind of protects like a convoy of like cargo ships that are moving across these, because this stretch is pretty close to Japan, like it's Japanese waters effectively. So they try to like go after one of the ships to draw out the ship they're after, right? It's basically bait it out, but of course these planes show up, they take some hits, they dunk under the water, and this is the part where the plot started to make me like I felt a little bit like disappointed in the writing here. Is that a torpedo starts coming towards them, and their immediate assumption here, their immediate like thought process is that,
oh, you're jumping to there, okay.
Yeah, gotcha. Well, because this is pretty much in this section as well. It's basically they think that this torpedo that's coming after them, that they're able to dodge it, right? They don't get hit, but they think it was their torpedo that went kind of rogue, that sort of, came around, and like that's the assumption. And they say, oh, it's 1 in 100, but torpedoes can go bad. Like this is, and all I could think was, and you don't think this is a chance this is another ship, or maybe even that Japanese sub you ignored like 20 minutes ago. Maybe that has something to do with this, perhaps. Especially when they hear a signal that they don't quite understand, and like, what's this signal? What's this beating here? And I'm like,
I feel like we might be conflating a few scenes here, though, because I remember what you're talking about, but that doesn't happen until like the last 10, 15 minutes, and there's a whole extra section on top of that.
No, it happens. No, it happens twice. It happens way earlier on in this section. Yeah,
fair enough. Maybe I'm missing that then.
Because when it happens again later, like there's that signal again, and then it's that's what. By that point, the captain's like lying in his bed because he's been relieved of duty with the concussion. And he realizes, oh, it's a Japanese sub, and he sort of climbs up and tells them. But it was set up earlier, and I couldn't help but feel that first time it popped up. I'm like, I feel like you guys should be assuming that there's some other vessel here. Like that, I don't know. This feels like an obvious like leap. Like this is more likely to be another vessel firing on you than one of your own torpedoes did like a little bit of a 180. I don't know. It felt a bit strange to me that we wait so long to have them realize, oh, there's a Japanese, because the reveal is not only just as a Japanese sub following them, it's basically the captain says, that's what's actually been destroying all the subs. All of our subs are focusing on this ship that we think is killing all of our subs, but it's actually the submarine that's kind of backing it up, that's actually doing all the destroying. And it's like, okay, they've basically been using the whole bait and switch tactic the entire time, and our subs have just been falling into the trap every single time. And that's kind of the realization by the end. I just think the steps to get there made it feel a little bit, like, I don't want to say they felt dumb per se, but it felt a little like,
I mean, I think, yes, from a modern technological perspective, it makes, like, it seems dumb. I do wonder how normal a torpedo doubling back is.
Yes.
Like, that's the thing. With modern technology, that seems really dumb. Well, but maybe that was a thing back then.
Well, yeah, maybe, but that's the thing, though. It's a 1-2 punch. It's not just that. It's that, plus we hear this strange signal. What is that? And they all listen to it as if, is this some sort of Morse code? But none of us can quite decipher it. The fact that those two things combined don't make them go, oh, is there another vessel out here that we don't understand what the signal is because it's a new type of sub that we've not encountered before, or whatever it is, you know?
I think I'd be more okay. And I look, I agree with you with the way the movie presents it. It is a dangling thread that feels a bit weird. I think all I was waiting for was someone to dismiss the Morse code. Like, I didn't even need it to be true. I just needed them to say, whatever, who cares, we hit the ship. Like, that's all we needed to do. Because that's the bit that got me, was that they keep on coming back to the fact that this Morse code is a thing that will eventually be resolved. And they do it in the most obnoxious possible way, which is they have the Morse code beeping, and then Clark Gable, he gets sick at one point, he's in bed. They have the Morse code beeping, and then you have whatever officer is like, well, I can't understand a word of it. Well, I can't understand a word of it. Well, I can't understand. And he just repeats that over and over. I'm like, okay, you could just have the Morse code. I don't need all the extra, like, reminder here that that's a dangling thread.
Yeah, and my assumption is that it's just Morse code, but it's Morse code where the people who are using it are speaking in Japanese, so it's indecipherable to people who understand Morse code but use it in English. Because I
mean, either that or they have their own encoding method. Like, either way, it's just Morse code, but doesn't make sense to anyone decoding it.
Yeah, so... Yeah, because I mean, I don't remember if the first time you hear the signal and they all listen to it is like right after the torpedo thing, but it's definitely in the vicinity of it. It's like it's in that sort of section of the movie, and I just remember thinking, oh, these two things feel very related to each other, and why is no one? I almost think it would have been smart to not have the whole we're going to ignore that Japanese sub that we detected, like, you know, a third into the movie. Like, I think maybe having it be more of a genuine surprise that they've been tracked by a Japanese sub the entire time might have been a more interesting reveal without teasing it early on.
I think that's where we differ, is that I didn't put that Japanese sub from the beginning was the Japanese sub later. I just took it as that was a submarine, and the entire point of that sequence was we are running away from it, and it'll just do its thing, and we'll do our thing, and we're totally separated from it. But you're taking that as they were followed the whole way, and were being given the coordinates.
I think that's it's the consequence of the captain's bad choice of just ignoring this vessel that they've discovered, right? It's like okay. I think that's kind of important to the themes for me, that's that sub.
That's fair. I mean, my whole thing is that if that were the case, I would imagine that because they still run drills after that. Like, they're still very vocal, very openly doing things after that happens before they get to the Bungo Straits, which makes me believe that they would have been attacked very soon after leaving the submarine because they're leaving themselves open. Instead, it waits until they sink a cargo ship at the Straits before they get attacked. And that makes me think that the submarine is just there in the Straits waiting for them.
I mean, I get the argument there. I think there's kind of this idea that they're being followed, or because one of the things that comes up later is that there's this radio broadcast that's happening, which actually comes from Japan, but it's in English, and the whole point is for like people who are either in the American Navy or military or anyone close by can hear it. And it sort of says, hey, later on in the film, they think they've sunk this submarine. They haven't, but they've been convinced they have. And they start saying, hey, apologies to Captain this, XO that, and Officer this. And wait, how do they know all these names? How do they have so much information about who's on this submarine? This doesn't make sense. And the reason it ends up being, I thought there was going to be a mole for a second, but it turns out that, no, they're actually just when they put the trash out the submarine and it's supposed to be weighed down, it's actually been floating up. And either Japanese boats or whatever have been collecting it. And that all these names and details have been getting out because of that. And that's presumably also why the planes knew they were coming, because they've been leaving a trail behind them. But I was also kind of thinking, well, if the submarine's been sort of quietly following them from a distance the entire time, that would also be why the planes were ready. Because hey, they're going to come to this spot because all their submarines tend to come to this spot, and we take them out. So
no, that's fair. I mean, I think that they explained it just with the trash. I think that first submarine was just for the purposes of showing him as being a quote unquote coward, and then it goes away. But honestly, it doesn't impact much of the plot. It's not that big of a thing, but it does. That's kind of leading into the third act sort of stuff for me. Is obviously the whole movie is the white whale's the Akakazi. That's the whole point of it. He believes that the Akakazi is the one that is sinking the ships, that it's the one that needs to be taken out because it's the one that took him out. And so he gets his revenge. They fire the torpedoes, they sink the Akakazi, and congratulations, it's all done. However, then you hear the Morse code come up again, and he puts two and two together and says, it was never the Akakazi, it was the submarine. And so then the entire last 15 minutes of this is introducing the real final boss, which is this now submarine battle between the two.
Which is... So, I think what's weird about that is that the submarine battle is by far the best of the Navy stuff, the entire movie, right? It's way more interesting, it's got way more atmosphere, so it's actually the right choice to make the enemy another submarine. It absolutely is. But it's worth mentioning, Clark Gable's not really there for when they actually take out the ship. He's still in bed at that point. He doesn't get out of bed until the Morse code thing happens. So he's not even kind of present for that. And then it becomes about taking out this other sub. But the pivot point, though, that I was talking about earlier, that I think murkies things, as much as I was just complaining about I think the thinly veiled, we're going to tease that there's a Japanese sub, and then we're going to have characters dismiss multiple things until they finally have the realization that there's another submarine that's coming after them. I think that's a little bit frustrating and clunky, even though I like the idea of them just having that realization late on. I like that broad concept, just not the way they actually execute it. The actual pivot point for me, where it does lose me in terms of the character writing, is after the concussion and after three of the men have died, because even though they're not hit by the torpedo, during that whole segment, there's a lot of depth charges been put down to try and get to them from the ship, and a couple of those do hit directly, and water comes in, people get hit. The nice guy whose birthday's on the 7th, a torpedo falls off a shelf and lands on him.
It's brutal too. They obviously no gore or anything at the time, but they do the thing where they specifically do a top-down shot of his screaming face and then a looking up shot of the torpedo landing on top.
Yeah, POV shot of it just coming down and the screen just goes black for a couple of seconds. So they have all this happen, right? Captain's got a concussion, and this is when finally Lancaster says, I'm taking command of this ship, we're going back to Pearl Harbor, and that's that.
To be fair, Lancaster does not know about the concussion, though. He's doing this specifically because we shouldn't have been in the Bungo Straits, and you're looking to go back again.
Yeah, well, that's the other part of it, yeah. He immediately says, all right, let's prep. Let's wait a couple hours, let things die down, do some repairs, and then we're going straight back. And he's like, are you mad? You just about almost got us killed, and we're not even meant to be there in the first place. I'm taking command. We're going back to Pearl Harbor. So that is like fine. That's good. That makes sense. That vibes with everything the characters have been building up to over the course of the movie, and that's all fine. And there is some interesting fallout here where the crew seem a little bit divided on it. Like half the crew seem to think, oh no, like we actually kind of believe in this plan now. Maybe we should go after the thing. Like, or at the very least they say, oh, it's kind of weird we're going back home when we still have like 17 torpedoes left because like that feels a bit cowardly. But then some of them are like with Lancaster saying, no, we're not supposed to be here. So there's an interesting debate there that could have went somewhere. It never actually does go very far, but they at least float that idea a little bit.
Because the whole reason that he floated out the idea of going to the Bungo Straits to begin with is we are more than prepared to handle whatever we find there. And obviously he's wrong, but
yes,
Gable basically says we are more than prepared. Therefore, we are allowed to disobey direct orders if we have a special tactical reason to do so. And I believe that this is a special enough tactical reason. And that's some of the men agree. They're like, hey, we're here. Let's take out some Japanese while we're here. Let's
It's
go down
interesting that changes from the start of the movie where no one seems to be on board with the captain. So it's like, oh, he's won some people over, even if we, the audience, maybe side more with Lancaster still. Yeah. But anyway, they're having dinner, they listen to that sort of radio broadcast, and that's when they bring up all the names and stuff, and like, wait, how could they possibly know this? And because Lancaster has the realization that it's their garbage, their trash that's going up top, and that's where they're getting information from, and that's maybe how they've been predicting us, and so on, this makes him go straight to Gable, who's in his quarters, lying in the bed because he's technically sick and concussed. And basically he's like, oh yeah, now that I know this, we're going straight back. We're going to take out that ship, like you always wanted. And I'm like, I don't know why this has made you change your mind this hard, this quick, Mr. Lancaster. Why have you completely flipped on this?
So the reason provided in the movie is the fact that they are presumed dead by the Japanese Navy is actually a special tactical advantage. It's the thing that Gable lied about. It is actually a thing where they can use this to their advantage to be able to sink some ships. I don't think they properly explained or gave enough for explaining why Lancaster is now willing to, like, let that override his previous emotions. Because that's the bit that's getting me.
Because he never had, like, this bloodlust to go after this ship. He was never, like, that, like, the eyes set on it, that is the sole purpose of this boat. Because it literally wasn't the sole purpose of this submarine's mission. It was sent out to just patrol in certain waters, but not that. And, like, okay, so it just feels like such a 180 that all of a sudden he's like, yeah, of course we're going back and we're taking out this ship, because now we have this advantage. It just... Well, that is sure true. Yeah, they think your ship's done, right? They think the submarine's been sank. And I do like the segment, which is, hey, we're going to convince them that we're all dead by sending up like some of our supplies and mattresses and blankets. And also the 3 guys that died, send them up. So there's actually some dead bodies floating in the water, and that convinces them. But it's also kind of morbid and dark that they're like, hey, shove those dead bodies out of the tubes so they go up to the surface. And you do feel the weight of that. Like, honestly, the best part of that whole section is the absolute morbid weight of these decisions, and like the weight on Lancaster's face as he's carrying out this order to send all these people up.
He comes back up from down there after he's trying to like seal up whatever breach there was, and he gets a little, the concussion. And when he gets back up to the top, they're like, oh, how is it? Is it flooded down there? And he manages to get out the bare details, but then it hits him when he says 3 dead. Like, he has to acknowledge, oh God, I'm leading my crew into death again. Like, this is happening for another time.
Yeah, well, that was Gable, just to be clear, because I was talking about Lancaster before.
Lancaster? Yeah, no, Gable. Yeah.
But Lancaster's face, though, like, when he, like, goes down to, like, give these orders to, like, send, like, the bodies out and stuff, when he comes back up, And it's almost like even hearing that it's worked and that the other, like, ships, like, moving away or whatever, he doesn't look relieved or happy. He's just sitting there with that stare of, like, like, this is hell. We're in war. I feel it now, right? This is what he's going to be having the Nam flashbacks of in about 10 years' time.
Yeah. The other bit of it is there is this, I don't know, officer, just general guy who is very staunchly anti-Gable the whole time. Like, it never really changes. And he makes some comments about Gable and saying, like, oh, yeah, well, and like you said, there's almost the attempted mutiny at that one point of trying to install Lancaster and saying, hey, you take over. And he immediately shuts that down. But Gable's little assistant guy comes up to him and is like, excuse me, sir, I know you're an officer, but I just got to say, you're an ass. And Gable's just like, all right, you shouldn't do that. But also, like, thanks for having my back and all that. But, I need to be able to tell if people don't like me. However, once Lancaster does take over, the guy gets in front of the crew and says, all right, we're shipping back off. We're all going home. No big thing. And they're like, wait a minute, what about the captain's plan? What about going back in the Straits? He's like, that captain's bedridden and all the better for it. He's a dick. And that's where this assistant guy stands up and he's like, I don't even have words. Punch. Just jams him in the face. And I don't know, that sort of character development where people get more back, like digging in their heels in terms of their opinions about the characters, I almost like more for these side characters because it gives those sort of really emotional, powerful moments. Whereas Lancaster just flipping over shows intelligence and the ability to change, but it doesn't show like a deep character flaw within him.
It feels like it's missing a scene where, or at least the scene where he goes to Gable and explains kind of what he's realized about how they've known certain things and how they've been tracking them. It almost feels like there should have been more of like a convincing speech from Gable to convince Lancaster to like maybe change his mind. Like, hey, we've got an advantage now. We should use that opportunity. As much as it is going to be dangerous and as much as like we're kind of going off book a little bit, maybe this is actually something we should, but have him convince him, like have him actually really see the reasons for it. But he's already made these decisions in his head, so it just feels like a switch flipped.
Yeah. So the one thing, we're close when we were thinking about the pivot points. You were talking about the Lancaster all of a sudden changing his mind about that.
Yes, that's what I was talking about, yeah.
Yeah, my issue was slightly earlier, and it's not so much a character choice as a writing choice. The concussion, while I understand that like it is a concussion, it's caused by an event that's very quickly brought on, it does feel, from a writing perspective, kind of out of nowhere. For me, it doesn't feel like it was really something that was, obviously you don't set it up, but it feels like out of convenience more than anything else. And I was feeling that as I was watching it. And then as I was looking through some trivia just before we started, apparently there wasn't supposed to be a concussion. Gable basically was like, no, my character would be too proud to give up control of the ship. Like, there's no way that would happen. And he basically brought production to a halt because he was unwilling to film the scene until finally they came up with the idea of, what if we make you physically unable to do it? Would you do it then? And he's like, yeah, all right, fine.
So real life ego got in the way of the story progressing. That's interesting.
Absolutely. Yeah, but that's like, even as we were watching it, I was like, it's kind of weird that like he wouldn't still be trying for it, you know? Like the ego of his character should feel like he's still trying to take control of the ship, even if he's physically unable to by concussion. Knowing that it was just a write around for the idea of, okay, well, you recognize you're incapacitated, therefore you're going to give up the ship to Lancaster. That feels more convenient than anything else.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, it's again, it's not my bigger problem of that little sort of like transition, but I mean, it is. I mean, at the very least, it feels like maybe a little bit of a consequence, because it happens like while the other guys are dying. It's all kind of in that one kind of like, you know, action section of like all the destruction on the ship. So him having consequences personally for this and like physically, and you know, I did at least appreciate him trying to pretend, and like, because even when he gets checked out by the doctor, he's like, hey, this keeps between us, no one else on the ship knows that I've had this injury, that's an order. And I'm like, I don't know if you can give that. Like, I'm pretty sure the medical officers are allowed to supersede that because it's a medical issue.
Yeah.
You know, because I'm curious, because you called it mutiny earlier. Is it still technically mutiny if, like, the second in command saying, no, the captain's unfit to captain anymore, I should take over? That feels like it's the process, so it's not mutiny at that point.
Here's the thing. One of the guys is literally holding a Navy handbook, which means I assume that there is a process for it.
Yes.
Like, yes, correct. However, I think when you're just describing the situation of taking out the captain and installing someone else there, the easy term for that is mutiny. Especially because they're not doing it because he's unfit. They're doing it because they don't like his choice here. They don't like the thing that he's choosing to do.
No, you can still say that's unfit, just not physically. It's like if the orders become erratic and you think that he's making ill-advised choices, then that's a reason to say he's unfit. I think I hear mutiny and I think it's more of like a, I guess nefarious.
Like tying him up to the mast or something like that?
Well, no, not necessarily tying him up, but just the idea that the reason for the mutiny is not just, we have to, like, fix the problematic choices that are being made. It's like, because we want to do something ourselves with the ship, or we want to run away from the war because we're all scared and we don't want to get into the fight or something. Like, it's something that's actively going against the rules of the Navy, whereas this is very much, no, this is the safeguard to, like, put in place in case the captain goes bananas.
Yeah, no, like, look, I don't know about the Navy, but I know that for the past few years, there's been the idea of the 25th Amendment being invoked, which is literally just, if the vice president and most of the staff of the White House agree that the president is not fit, that they can just remove him without his permission. This is that, but put to a Navy thing. And obviously there's a process for it. Mutiny is just the easiest way to describe it in terms of saying, like, what the end result would be. Yeah.
I feel like there's, like, connotations with the word that I think don't apply to this type of thing.
Because it sounds violent. It sounds like it's this thing of, like, oh no, we're going to forcibly remove you, instead of it being we're going to legally remove you.
I feel like a captain who's been taken away from command, like, often will say this is mutiny, but it's usually not true in that context, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Right?
They feel like it's mutiny for sure, because they feel like they're of sound mind, but no.
Yeah.
I have a feeling we might want to come down to terms on it here, because out of the next couple movies, I am assuming we're going to come across this problem more than once.
There's at least one movie we're going to be doing soon that this exact scenario of like the process of relieving the captain of his command is going to come up, and I don't think it technically counts as mutiny, even if the captain decides that he thinks it's mutiny because he disagrees with the assertion, and therefore we have the,
it makes sense, relieving of command. I think that is the proper terminology for it.
Yeah. Anyway, so. Yeah, I mean, the whole thing here, once they realize there's another sub, is like, okay, we know there's another sub there. We start cutting to that other sub, although we don't get subtitles or anything for what the Japanese officers are saying. But not that you need them, really, because obviously they're just saying typical things like, honestly,
the way they were shooting the scenes, it felt like both sides were, like, kind of saying the same things.
Probably.
Where it's like, because you see the one sub turns off its engines, and then we cut to the Japanese, and then they turn off their engines, and so we're both just sitting there,
all the way around,
still in the water. Yeah.
Because the Japanese turn off theirs first, and then they're like, okay, yeah, we'll do the same, go complete silent. And this is one of the fun things about submarine stories, is that sound matters, not just the engines, but like, we all need to try and be quiet, no one should be talking unnecessarily, everyone be quiet. And like both submarines are doing this, so they're both, and we see this wide shot of them both being really close together, and it's like, well, we can't just not have the engines on forever, eventually it is a problem, but we have to hope they chicken out and turn theirs on first so we know where they are and we can react to that.
I love that setup because it doesn't happen. Like, I love the idea that they're just throwing out these ideas and they aren't working.
Yeah, it's kind of a hope. And then they end up coming with another thing is like, okay, what was this last position? I was like, well, we know one axis, but we don't know how deep they are. So it's like, how useful is that? And it's like, well, if we rise to the top, attack one of the Japanese convoy ships, because we've already taken out the ship that's up there protecting them, that submarine is going to have to rise to protect the ships. So we'll know where they're going to pop up. in theory, right? At least have a rough idea. And that ends up being like the tactic. But I do really want to emphasize that once it is submarine versus submarine and they both go quiet and they're all just sort of sweating and trying to be quiet inside the subs, like, yeah, this is the tension. This is the atmosphere that I want from a submarine movie. This is good shit. And it is probably from like a excitement levels the best sequence of the movie. Not necessarily the best from a character standpoint, but certainly the best from
the
like
character stuff is done now.
Yeah.
Like Lancaster and Gable have come to an understanding. They're both like co-captains of the ship effectively at this point.
Yes.
There's nothing else going on character-wise.
So, yeah, and then ultimately, yeah, when they both surface, it's like, okay, it's hiding behind this other Japanese ship, but it's this shallow ship, they call it, so we can fire a torpedo underneath that ship, and it'll hit the sub, which they do, and it works.
And I love it from the Japanese perspective, where they're just like, you know, they move behind the ship, and as soon as they're behind the ship, we don't see from their perspective, and then as the torpedoes come under the ship, that's the first point you see them, and like, the Japanese captain's barking orders, first mate's barking orders. We don't know what any of them are, but you assume it's, oh shit, we're screwed. And then giant explosion. Yeah.
And they're also on the surface at this point, so they're actually up top in the open air watching this like explosion happen. And Clark Gable like succumbs to his injuries and keels over and dies after he's taken out his white whale of the submarine, which technically he didn't know it was his white whale until about 10 minutes ago, but it's his white whale now.
But he stayed alive for it. He got there in the end.
So the movie ends with them having like a funeral at sea for the captain, which honestly, all I could think as they dumped his body into the water was like, he has a wife back home. Do you not think she would want to have a funeral for him?
I think that with submarines, like accepted practices, we can't keep a dead body inside of our submarine. Like that would just not work.
Yeah, but they're going back to Pearl Harbor show at this point because you know, like they were going back before they changed their mind, and like they've used most of their missiles now. So like let's go home.
It is the entirety of the Pacific Ocean. I'm curious about how long that trip would take, even with lightweight submarine fuel there.
It's a good question. Actually, I don't really know. What state is Pearl Harbor in?
Hawaii.
Hawaii,
so as close as you can get.
Yeah, I mean, that's much closer than any other state. So.
Submarine time from Japan to Hawaii. Let's see. 3,300 nautical miles, 6 to 10 days. I don't know if that's back then or now, but 6 to 10 days.
I mean, if it's more than that, then, I mean, that already sounds like a long time, to be honest. Yeah. 6 to 10 days, that's ages.
With a rotting body in this tin can.
Man. I don't know why, but I thought it'd be like 2 days tops.
No, the world's a lot bigger than you think, Pete.
Yeah, well, it's not so much that I'm misjudging the size of the world. I guess I'm misjudging how fast a submarine is compared to, say, a plane. Is my problem here? I guess I thought submarines were much quicker than that, but apparently not.
Nope, not quite.
Oh wow.
The only other bit I wanted to mention is actually much earlier on in the movie. Just it's a tiny little sequence, but as they're running drills, the guy who dumps the trash is actually stuck up topside.
I forgot, but this is like a high scene of comedy where they kind of accidentally lock him out the sub when they're going to go under, and he has to like tap on the top, and they realize they're already like mid-process, so he has to kind of like hang on and survive for a minute whilst they're sort of dunking a little bit and then come back up.
It ends up being comedy, but in the moment I'm like, is this going to be the thing that turns all the crew against Gable, like officially? Is like they just killed this guy because he was running his drills without like checking the safety stuff. But no, it ends up being when they get to him, he's just like, who told you could take out the trash? And it's like, oh, I got it from this first mate. He's like, well, the captain's the only one who can say it, so screw you. And then that's it. It's never brought up again.
No. It's an okay. I mean, obviously, it feels like maybe it's there to show the tension a little bit further, and maybe show just how arguably reckless perhaps the captain's being and running these drills, where he's so hell-bent on doing it that he's like missing other things that are happening.
I think it comes down to the fact that these are his drills, but when everything is said and done, he critiques his crew. He critiques the people for like not following proper procedure and all that, which I think is just meant to enforce the idea of the crew being like, screw that guy. Like, he's absolutely out of control. Oh, that's the other bit about it. I know we mentioned that they don't know at the beginning that the Bungo Straits are the deadly part of it, but at one point Lancaster explains it. He straight up says, like, after they're running drills like crazy, Lancaster's expecting everyone here to start just railing against the captain. And when he's asking why they're not, they're all just kind of like accepting it. They explain we're going to Area 7. That's the most dangerous area. Like, we need to run these drills so we can be safe. And Lancaster's like, no, we're not going to the dangerous area. We're staying away from that. That's what the Bungo Straits are. And after that, you see all the men are like, oh, well then, yeah, screw the captain. Like, why is he making us do all this stuff if we're not even going to be facing any like major danger or anything like that? And when Lancaster goes down, that I think it's the same admiral character who told him like, you're not getting a boat, but I could be wrong. He steps up and is just like, cool. You told them they're not going to be in danger. How are you going to explain the drills now? You've just turned them all against the captain, and you get that little bit of adversarial stuff going on.
It's funny because I'd actually read all of that as him turning them against the captain. It felt like he was trying to put them at ease because they were so terrified of like where they were going. And he kind of explains that, oh no, we're not going to like the danger zone. Like, you think it's all a Sector 7, but it's not. It's just the Bungo Straits. We're not going there. But there is that point you brought up though, where the other guy, I don't think it's the admiral though, because I don't know why the admiral would be on the ship.
Yeah, it was just because he was coming up and was able to speak frankly. He was able to speak like that, which made me think he was a higher ranking guy.
Yeah, but I think he's just like, hey, how are you going to explain these drills now? And I think that was less of, oh, you're going to turn them against the captain, and more, well, you kind of help the captain there in a sense by like, you know, stopping, like getting everyone off this like sort of like hell-bent, like scared mode that we're in, right? You've kind of helped calm the crew down. But the problem now is how you justify not. I think the point he was trying to make to him almost was like, well, why do you think we're doing all these drills then? What are these drills for if we're not going into dangerous waters? I think that was less about how the crew are going to see the captain and more about, should we not be questioning why the captain's making these duties then if we're not going into the dangerous waters? So I think I read that like an entirely different way than what you seem to have read it.
No, I was definitely feeling like he was still bitter. It was early enough in the movie where I felt like he was still bitter about losing out on his ship, and this is the most he could do without like actually disobeying an order.
Well, that's the thing though. I don't think he ever, as much as he is bitter about losing his ship, and he's honest with the captain whenever it comes up. I think when it comes to the crew, he goes out of his way to never be unprofessional about how he views the captain. He always backs him up. Again, when they say, hey, we want you to take command, we've been reading the rule book, he shuts that down immediately and sticks up for the captain. I feel like everything he does is to keep the ship running as it's supposed to, and everyone following the captain's orders. So for me, that fit into that.
And this was just like an oversight kind of on his part, where he didn't expect the immediate fallout of why the drills are running.
Well, yeah, but I don't think the why the drills were running was about the captain, though. I don't think that was about how the crew were going to view the captain. I think that was specifically, well, why are we doing these drills then? But not in relation to the other men so much as, well, why are we doing these drills? Shouldn't we all be questioning that, including you and me?
Okay.
Right, that's how I read that scene.
That's fair. I get where you're coming from.
I think that was trying to build the tension of what are his intentions here, because this is before they know he's going to take them into the danger zone, right? Like you know, because we know he's going to do that, but Lancaster just promised all the men, no, we're not going to hit the danger zone. We're just going to hit we're going to near the danger zone, but we're not going to go into the danger zone.
We've got explicit directions not to play any Kenny Loggins while we're around here.
Look, it's just a good phrase for it, all right?
I
know. So yeah, I mean, it's a pretty solid movie. I think the tensions between the characters is solid for most of it, even though it does take a couple of pivots later on. I think are a little bit, you know, just underwhelming or undermine what it was doing beforehand, because it doesn't feel like it was earned its change. However, after that, you get maybe the best submarine stuff, which is the submarine versus submarine game of chicken, which actually is the most atmospheric it ever gets, as that section, and the most tense it ever gets.
Yeah, it's weird. I feel like in terms of the battle scenes, my interest is directly related to how deep they are compared to sea level. The submarine stuff is the coolest stuff. Attacking the boats is okay. And then all the airplane dropping depth charge stuff is boring as hell. Like, I couldn't care less about that stuff.
That's fair. Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, no, there you go. It's a good movie. It's not, I would say, a great movie. It does have some thin elements that could have been fleshed out a bit more. But I don't think the problems that I have with it, though, are anything to do with age. I don't think it's because of when it was made. I think it's just a little bit of a better script, maybe, particularly for the last chunk of it. Might have just tipped it over the edge into being like more of a genuine classic. Whereas, because it's not like I'd heard of this movie before I started researching submarine movies, right? You know,
I feel like I did. Like, I don't know about hearing about the movie in terms of like knowing what it was about, but the words "run silent, run deep" were in my head before this.
Yeah, that's fair. All right, David, what are you rating Run Silent, Run Deep out of 10?
It's all about the comparisons. My entire rating scale is built entirely about how I feel about it relevant to other films. And obviously, Enemy Below is the most easy comparison, which I did give a 7 to. I think this is better than that. I think I enjoyed the character work more. I think overall the plot worked more for me. And that's more important to me than one strong character and a lot better production value. I think that having an overarching general better script is better for me. Is that enough to get it up a full half point out of the 7 into 7.5? I don't think so. I think it's still in 7 territory. I think it's still there for me. It's close. It's definitely higher than Enemy Below for me, but it's still a solid 7.
Yeah, it's not a night and day difference, right? Is the thing. Because I also give it a 7, I think, Enemy Below overall. And I think, I'm saying this is better, but it's still a 7. Is I think where I'm landing on it as well, which is because they both have different strengths, and I think I like the strengths of this one a little bit more, but it's not enough to actually go all the way up. If one of the problems I had didn't exist, then it probably would go up to at least the 0.5 or beyond. But as it is, I think it's a perfectly fine 7 out of 10. It's a nice Sunday afternoon watch. Raining outside, you just want a movie on while you're doing something. Perfect fit for that. Absolutely perfect for that. But
and at a brisk like 90-ish minutes. Don't gotta overcommit either.
Oh, don't worry, we've got a behemoth coming next week with Das Boot.
God. When I built like our recording schedule, I always assumed that the collector's cut are easier because I don't have to watch 2 movies instead of 1. I don't know how that's gonna work this time, Pete. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to do that. Before we move on though, it doesn't make the cut.
Close.
Yeah.
Kind of close. Yeah. Kind of close. It's getting near. It's getting near, but I don't think it's quite. I think it's not one that I would recommend against watching. I think if it sounds interesting to you, you should absolutely check it out. But I don't think it's a flat out, no, you need to see this, which is I think what making the cut basically means. So
no, absolutely. It's around. It's definitely something that has its audience. It's just not something that I can make a blanket yes for.
Yep, for sure. So, like I said, Das Boot is next up on the docket. That is next week on Collector's Cut as we get into the 80s and we get into some of the more famous movies featuring submarines. So that should be interesting to say the least. So we'll see how that goes. But of course, you can support the show over at Patreon, patreon.com/MailFuzzTV. Get access to the ratings rundown segments we do for each episode now, as well as our monthly bonus show called Extra Reels, where we review some of the worst movies ever made. Recent inclusions being Lucretia, the Halle Berry Catwoman movie, and even Tommy Wiseau's classic The Room have all been episodes in recent times. In fact, there is a free episode this month called Club Lingerie, which is like an extra on top of the regular monthly one, but it's free for everyone on YouTube. You can get a taste.
I love that Pete can just decide that we're getting free episodes of that go on top of the schedule, so that I have to watch more bad movies without any sort of anything else going into it.
Like it's a duty. It's
yeah.
Right?
Look, I know these are all military-based movies, but I gotta say, I just really want to make this up front. I have no sense of honor or duty whatsoever.
That's fine. That's fine. You can be court-martialed for your disrespect.
I will gladly be hung.
Hanged, not hung.
He said hung in the movie.
He did,
said that,
but I'm pretty sure he's wrong. You're meant to say hanged, because saying I would gladly be hung means you're saying I would gladly have a big penis, and I don't think that's what you were going for.
No, that's what I was going for.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
All right, there you go, everyone. That's Collector's Cut. Like, subscribe, give us 5 stars of your podcast app, all those things to help. And check out the other shows we do, like the Atomic Cinema Experiment, our sci-fi movie podcast. That's me and David as well, every week. Check that out. That's the show. Thank you very much for joining us. We do appreciate it. Keep watching movies, and if you can get it, it's always nice to have diplomatic immunity.